So some part of today's discussion or meditation and contemplation will actually be based on the classes that we have gone through already with the Ramana Maharshi's teachings. And what we're going to be focusing mostly is on the mostly to contemplate. So I won't be talking all the time in this session, and we can just use the time to just kind of contemplate and reflect on the words. So what I thought I'll do is I'll just kind of first go through a few words, and we will just kind of reflect on those words. And also, the chart that I had used before, I'll just reflect that, and I'll just project that at some point. And we can just kind of try to do what is called as mananam on that. So here are some words which are the teachings from Ramana Maharshi and his quotes, and particularly regarding knowing one's true nature. And so one of the first points, the reason why we have to get on the process of inquiries is because he says that happiness is your real nature. And so we are trying to understand ourselves because that our true nature is happiness. So he says that without understanding yourself, what is the use of trying to understand the world? So the self-inquiry that Ramana Maharshi teaches us is that inquiry of knowing our true nature, which is of the nature of happiness. So why wouldn't we want to know that nature, which is of the nature of happiness? Because after all, we are seeking happiness. You know that what all of us are seeking is happiness, and the true happiness is in our true nature, is in our real nature, and that is also the teachings of Advaita Vedanta, where or almost all teachings in one way or the other point to that thing where it says that our own inner nature is of the nature of happiness, that the happiness that we are seeking in the world outside is actually right within us. And so this Ramana Maharshi points by actually saying, also using the word consciousness sometimes. You know, what in Vedanta is known as Sat, Chit, Ananda. Consciousness is the nature of a true being. And this he also says what is called as Sat, which is I amness. You know, everyone knows I am. You know, no one can deny his being. That is what he says. And that knowing of I am is possible because we are also of the nature of consciousness. And so that I know I am is possible because I'm conscious. And this conscious nature is also Ananda, meaning joy, Sat, Chit, Ananda. So the process that he recommends is the process of the inquiry of who am I, you know, how do I really know who am I? And the steps in knowing who am I is not so much like just meditating all the time, but to consciously inquire into who am I. So he says, not the body because it is decaying, not the mind because the brain will decay with the body, not the personality nor the emotions, for these also will vanish with death. That which comes and goes, rises and sets, is born and dies, is the ego. That which always abides, never changes, and is devoid of qualities, is the self. So this is what he calls as the self-realization, knowing oneself. It's to know that one is not this body, one is not this, what we call as the vital sheath, the prana, the pranamaya, or nor are we the mental sheath or the intellectual sheath, the thoughts, feelings that come and go, or whatever we take ourselves to be the mind. The mind itself is not us, because the mind is nothing but the projection of the ego, And yet, on the path of inquiry, we use the mind. So, how does this work? So he says, what is meditation or inquiry is that he says meditation depends upon the strength of the mind. So we do need the mind to some extent. But he says the mind must be unceasing, even when the meditation must be unceasing, meaning that inquiry must be unceasing when one is engaged even in work and activities. So he says, how is this possible? He says meditation or the self-inquiry is sticking to one thought. And that one thought keeps away all other thoughts until we realize that state where we are beyond the state, the mind itself. And he says there is no mind to control if you realize the self. So a lot of our practices, generally, meditation, we start with some amount of controlling the mind. And but that is not necessary if you realize the self, because he says the mind having vanishes, the self shines forth. And this is what his main teaching says, wherein he says where the mind is left without anything to cling to, then it naturally becomes still. So a lot of practices we do, we have to try to control the mind, make that mind still, and then we feel a sense of peace, we feel a sense of joy. But in the teachings, Ramana Maharshi's teachings, he's trying to say that through inquiry, we realize, the mind realizes that it itself is mithya, meaning false. And so when the mind is not there, then all the world that we perceive, the sense objects and everything, we realize that also is not true, that is not false. So then that attraction of the mind towards outward objects ceases. So naturally, then the mind becomes still. So this process of stilling the mind, it's different in this kind of process where the knowledge, the wisdom will naturally make the mind settled or come inward and settle in the heart, he says, which is self or the nature of our true being. So in that sense, in meditation, in this process, we're not trying to gain something, nor are we trying to gain a certain kind of a blissful state of mind, because there is nothing new to be gained, in this process. That what we are is already that. So we don't have to gain anything new. We just have to come back to that true self and abide in that true self. And so this is what he calls as also silence, a natural silence is what we call as stillness. So he says this silence is truth, silence is bliss, silence is peace, and hence silence is the self, meaning that our self, our true nature or atma or consciousness, that itself is of the nature of silence. And in relation, everything else is activity, movements, it comes and goes, and it's changing, So this is one of the main things that he says. So that which comes and goes, rises and sets, is born and dies, is the ego. That which always abides, never changes, and is devoid of qualities, is the self. So the process that he gives for us for this is a couple of things, and which we can also which we are already trying. So one thing he says is, stop everything you're doing, and for a few moments, look inside yourself at your awareness, trying to focus on it. Just be aware of your awareness without thinking of anything. So this is, if we can try that, it's like you try to just become aware of this nature of us being aware, meaning the fact that I'm aware, we try to feel this awareness and this consciousness. And so this is one way where we directly try to abide in that nature of the sense of I amness, the sense of being aware, you know. And he says, thought after thought might try to divert your attention and make you forget this exercise. This is natural since the mind is not trained to focus. However, if you persist, even for a brief moment, you might experience the sense of calmness, bliss, and happiness, and a different, wider consciousness. This feeling of existence of consciousness is always with you, no matter where you are or what you're doing. So this I had outlined last time, and I will try to project it in the. I actually made a little change to that, but this is mostly that chart that I had shown you all. And we can see if we can go step by step with this. So the first inquiry that Ramana Maharshi here is giving us is this understanding of what is mind, So here in what is mind, so the first process is that mind is, of course, we know is a stream of thoughts, it's a continuous one after another thoughts, and it sense of continual thoughts gives us a sense of there being a mind, So now he says this can be divided into two ways. One is this thought and I thought or I feeling, So first what we have is we always kind of use this thoughts, meaning because we are using our senses, we're using our perception, we see people, we think of people. So we are always using the world as an outward thing for us. So everything is outward, we see, we hear, we taste, touch, and then we think. So all this is based on outward objects, the interaction, and he calls this as this, idam, in Sanskrit, idam vritti, this thought or the world thought, everything I objectify. And then there is a subjective kind of thought, aham thought, which accompanies every idam vritti. So this aham vritti is there with every idam vritti, meaning this I thought is there with every this thought. So anything I think of, without having a sense of I-ness, I cannot think of this. I'm not aware of this. So this constant sense of I has to be there in order for me to experience this. So I thought and this thought go together. So now we can try to see whatever thought you're getting, whatever thought, you may see, you may think that, okay, I'm seeing Swamiji, or I'm hearing this, or I'm here in this meeting, or I'm here in this meditation exercise. See, all this is a thought. And in this is a central thought, which is I thought. So, or you can say I feeling. So this I amness feeling is what we first try to hold on to. We try to see if we can zoom in on that, because the self-inquiry process, what he's talking about, is the world comes to us because of the mind, or this mind is nothing but the I thought. So the world comes and goes because of this I thought. So what is the exercise of who am I here is we continuously stay with this I thought. So first we try to identify that there is a I thought. And the next step is we try to see that in this I thought, the sense of observer, or naturally when it observes something, it immediately makes a comment, or it immediately there's another thought, like I see something or I hear something, there is this, oh, I like this, I don't like this, or it starts judging. So this is the working of our conceptual mind. So our conceptual mind immediately starts categorizing. It starts saying, oh, this is like that, or that is like this, or this is black, this is white, or this is good, this is bad. So this mind immediately kicks in and starts not just perceiving, but it also starts qualifying it. And we don't have to immediately in this exercise stop that, but we have to hold on to the sense of I-ness. So the sense of whatever thoughts you're getting, the sense of I-ness, impartially we try to become aware. So let everything come, let all thoughts come, and you hold on impartially to the sense of I-ness. So now what happens slowly is that before this I thought was just a very in the background. Now it comes to the foreground. So we realize that with every thought, I carry this I thought, and it further qualifies as I am this, or I am happy, I am feeling good, or I'm confused, I don't know what this is, or whatever thoughts. All this is being observed now. So the first process is everything that we see in the world is the mind. And the mind is nothing but the I thought. So this, once we reduce this, then we hold on to this I thought impartially. Now, slowly, as we keep doing this, and what we do in this process is we observe that this I thought has a nature of not just being observed, but also it is kind of something that arises and falls as such. And one very clear way, if we keep observing this, is that when we go to deep sleep, for example, so even the sense of this I-ness we drop as such, conscious sense of I-ness, we drop that. Yet it's not completely gone. That is why we are able to reflect when we wake up that, oh, I had a good sleep, or I slept, that feeling that is still there. But this active, judgmental, conceptual kind of thinking mind drops. And also when we meditate sometimes, when we come to a point of quiet, stillness, this judgment thinking kind of mind starts dropping. But if you go further, a little further also, if you keep seeing, the sense of I amness also doesn't stay for too long. In the sense that it is not that objective or that this subjective I which is dependent on an objective I. So that sense also stops dropping, and that is what Ramana Maharshi is actually saying when he says the ego also falls or becomes clearly observed, meaning we realize the nature of the ego. So when the I thought is observed, or then its false nature is seen, who or what that remains? What is the source of this I amness? Or we can say there is a bigger I amness or something. But this sense of I amness, which is what helps us, qualifies us, through which we interact on a daily basis. Whenever we say, I am so and so, and I interact with the world like on that, based on that, or sometimes unconsciously also, we are constantly carrying the sense of I amness. But when through wisdom, when through inquiry, we realize that we can still interact. So that doesn't mean we can no longer interact. We can still interact. But what happens is we realize that this sense is not the real me. This I that I'm constantly carrying for transaction with people, that is not the real me. That is not the real source of who I am. So that is what he says, pure consciousness. This ultimate observer is unveiled. So here the ultimate observer, meaning that which doesn't have this likes and dislikes, raga, dvesha, is completely impartial, and it doesn't come and go. It is the source of I thought. And then now we can go back and look, like all the activities of the mind. It is nothing but a reflection of this pure consciousness. So all that we are doing, all that we are interacting, all that we are doing here, listening, hearing, and all that, it is all but a reflection of consciousness. So we can just try once more, just follow see if we can follow these steps. So no need to kind of go into some deep meditation, because we can keep a little active mind. If it helps for you to close your eyes, you can close your eyes. So first, you just become aware that just normally, whatever thoughts you're perceiving. So if you feel suddenly that there is no thought at all, then just observe that as well, because there is a sense of I-ness which is aware that there is no thought. So that also can be observed. So we can even also become aware here that you're listening to the sound, you are feeling the touch of the seat wherever you're seated. And all this is aware, this, you may hear some sound, or you may hear my voice. So the sense of I amness is always there in all of this. It doesn't go away. Or a feeling of I amness is constantly there. It doesn't dissolve so easily. Now, all the world that I perceive, all that I am able to hear, smell, and feel through my sensations, and all that I'm perceiving, this is what is called as the mind. This is what we call as a mind. So the world is possible because of the mind. So everything I perceive, every phenomena, every concept, every thought I have, or every experience I have of the world, it's actually in my mind. So do we really have a world besides the mind? Because when you go to deep sleep, is there the world for you? So the world rises with the mind, and the mind rises with this I thought. This first thought we have when we wake up, is this I thought. And then we actually say, okay, I see the world, or what is the time? All that thought comes later. The first thought is, okay, I am here. That feeling, I am here. So we try to see if we can reflect, or in other words, become aware of this constant sense of I thought. Instead of just asking, who am I, we can also ask the question, where am I? Or where do I feel I am? Or how does this I that I think I am, how does it look like? Does it really look like my physical shape? Is that inner sense of I that I have, is it really like how I think physically I think of me? Is it like that? Even the sense that, okay, I am a good person, I'm such and such a person, how does that really appear to you? How does it, can you try to see what is this form or nature of this I that I think I am? You can also try to see, where is the sensation of this? Is it something in your brain or in your head, or is it all over the body? Where do you feel this? Where do you think it is? Or what is that concept you have that I am here? Is it in your head or somewhere? Or is it in your heart? Now try to see that even the sense of I-ness that you feel, you are aware of it. There is a sense of impartial awareness of even the sense of I amness. This feeling you have of I amness, that is also being aware. That is also in awareness. Now, don't try to intellectually figure out what is the sense of awareness, but try to see if you can feel that even the sense of I amness that occurs with every thought, every experience, every concept, every thought, that also is actually, this I amness is in a sense of awareness which you cannot objectify, you cannot as clearly see as you can feel your I amness. So the I feeling, the aham vritti, is something that is tangible. But the awareness of this aham vritti, this I thought, is not as tangible as it is when we try to feel it, get a sense of it. Even the word feeling is not right here, because it's just that there is a sense that it's always there, that awareness is there. And that awareness doesn't even need a personification, doesn't need to feel that I am, or it doesn't need to even say I like or I don't like. This awareness, consciousness, as Ramana Maharshi says, it's beyond the mind. It's not even a thought. It is not even that I thought. But because the mind is always in a state of thinking and always in a state of conceptualizing, always in a state of labeling and boxing and things like that, putting things in a box. So our attention goes always to that which is objectified. And it doesn't allow us to experience or realize that there is something which is beyond this objectified or localized sense of me. But it's always there. It's like actually it is much more evident than anything else. It's like when the sky is open and clear, we don't tend to look at that sky so much. But when there are clouds, when there are stars, and when all those things come and go, we feel that, oh, okay, there is the sky. So like that, sometimes we feel that we cannot have become aware of this consciousness. But right behind our thoughts, right behind this constant sense of I that I carry, there is this sense of awareness, consciousness. And it's always there, and it's the most obvious, and it's the most directly experienced feeling we have. Yet we are not able to know it because we are used to using the mind to always think, objectify, and qualify. Okay, so now you can relax if you like. So a couple of just final closing thoughts. You can try this as and when you get time today. See, the good thing with this is it's not necessarily that you have to be meditating always to do self-inquiry, but it helps to have a little calm and quiet place sometimes. So one of the things is, of course, keep asking the question, who am I, as Ramana Maharshi says. But other important thing is we're not looking for a specific answer. Initially, we can use like a Vedantic answer to kind of say that I'm not the body, I'm not the mind, I'm not these feelings and all that. But slowly and slowly, our question should lead to the point that we naturally know all this is not me. That negation has already kind of is happened. And through our other Shravanam in other classes and all that, that is all happening. So now the more and more deeper thing is to try to see if, without getting an intellectual answer, we just are open to staying with the non-answer, because we always want an answer. Like, okay, if who am I, then at least we need an answer. I'm not the body. So initially it's okay. We can use all that. But slowly, gradually, as we continue the meditation or this inquiry process, we should be comfortable with not having an answer, but yet having an inner sense of answer, which is an intuitive, all-knowing, ever-existing answer, and our what we call the pramana buddhi, our nature of seeking knowledge through senses, through intellectual process, should slowly shift more and more to this inner sense of being, inner sense of awareness, which is always there with us. Okay, all right. So we will leave it at this for today, and so we will continue in other classes. And let me just stop this recording.